And I don't think I would have had the work ethic to kind of make stuff happen in a shorter period of time had I not gone to law school, had I not been a lawyer, had I not learned that like sometimes you got to do shit that you don't want to do to get what you want.
Hey there, I'm Goli Kalkaran, and this is Lessons from a Quitter, where we believe that it's never too late to start over. No matter how much time or money you've spent getting to where you are, if ultimately you are not happy, then it's time to get out. If you're feeling stuck and you feel like there's gotta be more, there's gotta be a way to feel fulfilled and excited about what you do, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I will sit down with an inspiring guest who quit their professional career in order to forge their own path and create a life that they love. Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so happy you're here. Let me start off by saying sorry that I sound extra nasally today. I'm a little bit under the weather. Hopefully I will be back to normal by next week, and I will try to let Kelly do most of the talking today. Thank you to everyone who has reached out and told me about their own stories of jumping. I love hearing what you guys are doing. If you want to drop me a line, follow me on Instagram at Lessons from a Quitter. You'll, mostly see me making a fool out of myself on stories. Get a couple of memes here and there, maybe some inspiration, very typical Instagram stuff. But go ahead and follow me and drop me a line and let me know what you're doing and how I can help. I'm really excited about having Kelly Nugent on the show today. Kelly formerly was a lawyer and is now an actor, voice actor, comedian, internet nerd thing doer, and lady of too many podcasts. She can be found doing nerd stuff on Saving Throw Show and HyperRPG, which are shows on Twitch. And she hosts the podcast Teen Creeps, Public Domain Theater, Same Day Shipping, and Thank You for Questing. The reason I'm so excited to get into this, and I think it's going to be super valuable, is if you've listened to the show before, you will have heard me talk ad nauseum about the fact that there are so many new opportunities to make a living doing something you love. And every time I talk to someone that is stuck in their career, the number one thing I hear from them is, I don't know what I would do. And I think part of that problem is that people create an identity for themselves and they feel stuck in that. And then their frame of reference for what else is possible is, based on what they knew back when they were deciding. So 10, 15, 20 years ago, like what other jobs are there? And so much has changed. And I think you really have to be open to just thinking outside the box and seeing what other people are doing. For Kelly, like when somebody wants to be an actor or a comedian, we typically think of just traditional routes of acting and comedy. But what she's showing that she is making a living off of podcasts and off of Twitch, which, some of you may not even know what Twitch is. It's a platform for gamers, and people make money playing different types of games and analyzing games and teaching games and all this stuff. And so she'll, go into how she does it. But I love the example that if this is something you want to do, if you want to be an actor, it may not mean going to be an actor in Hollywood to be in blockbuster movies. There's so many new avenues. There's so many things. We've talked to different authors about the fact that you don't have to wait for the regular channels of publishing. And she's a great example of, I think, in entertainment, if you have this creative side that you want to pursue, there are a lot of different opportunities. And I really hope she enlightens people and maybe sparks something to let you realize that you could turn a hobby into a career. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk to Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I think you have one of the most interesting resumes that we've had on this podcast. So I'm really excited to get into all the cool stuff that you're doing now. But why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what sort of led you to law school and what law school was like for you?
It all began when I was born, probably. So my parents were my mom particularly was very traditional and strict. And basically they told me, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so I started studying pre-med. And I remember flunking out of organic chemistry. And then I was like, well, I can't do this anymore. So then I was like, oh, I'll do the other thing, which is to be a lawyer. And I remember also, this is something that I feel like a lot of people of our parents' generation loved to say, which was like, if you were a strong-headed child that argued a lot, everyone would be like, oh, you should be a lawyer. Like that was the trajectory for someone like you, someone that's like challenging and kind of tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like a lot of people, I had a very like Hollywood idea of what being a lawyer was going to be like. And because I was, you know, a pretty decent writer and wasn't afraid of speaking in front of people, I thought it would be just this thing that I would feel happy from doing. So I did the whole law school thing. And it is so funny how I could not make myself like give a shit about anything that was happening in the classes. And people would be like taking notes so fastidiously. And I would try so hard. Like I was like, yes, this is me. I am, because I can buckle down and work very hard. That is something that is one of my strengths, I guess. I would like try really hard. I'd study nonstop. But during lectures, I was like always on the internet doing other shit. Like I was just like reading about things like I didn't even care about. Like I would just go and like fall into these like strange dark holes of the internet. And then like lecture would be over and I'd be like, okay. And I was good enough at faking it that I would always do my homework. So when I got called on, I could participate. During that period of time in my life, it was never an option to not continue doing what I was doing.
Where did that come from? Because I think a lot of people feel that. I felt that. And now when I look back, I don't know why that was. And so is it your parents and family friends, or just internally, it's like you started something and you stick to things? Or what was it that like there was no option but to keep going?
I think it was a lot of family pressure. Some of it exercised in like positive ways where people were like, oh, I'm so proud of you for doing this. But then also, you know, the pressure was high with my family. Mm-hmm. Like growing up, it's so funny when people learn this about me, they're just like, that is so weird. And I can't believe you turned out pretty normal. Like in elementary school and middle school, I did not have summers because my mom said summer was time to get ahead. So I had to sit at the dining room table and do grammar and math lessons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at home. And I would just sit there for hours, kind of refusing to do it a lot and just literally staring out a window for like 4 hours a day. And then, you know, my mom getting all pissed at me because I wasn't being a good student. And so I think it was always like, you have to measure up. You have to be literally the best, because if you're not the best, you're the worst.
Right.
To answer your question, it was partially, you know, pressure from my parents, but then also kind of this thing that you learn from your parents, not through something they're teaching you, but just how they act, which tends to be, I feel like for their generation, it was very, you know, you choose a career, you put your head down, you do it, and then you die. Or, you know, like the goal is like this concrete thing where you're like, oh, well, then I'll make partner, or then I'll be like whatever for other jobs. Like then I'll be a VP of sales or whatever. Like there's like this goal. Whereas like the thing that I do now, happiness is measured in merely doing the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with the change of the internet, you know, whether it's they're to blame or not, I feel like the older generation, like there really was only certain jobs. And if you wanted to have a stable life, like, okay, we don't care if you like it or not, like you just have to kind of do it. And so I do think there's like this cognitive dissonance. They don't really understand what young people are kind of doing now and how they're making money. And so there is, you know, a lot of maybe looking down on what people do. But then there, I think for a younger generation that sees everybody else like actually liking what they're doing or living a life on their own terms, it is even a slower death. Like when you're sitting in your office realizing like you hate what you do and you're sort of stuck in this for the next 30 years. Like that's not as a swallowable of a pill like in this generation, I think.
For sure. And I mean, to my mother's credit, she was terrified when I left law, but I think she sees that like I didn't die.
Right.
So she has said like multiple times now, where she's like, God, you're so brave. She's like, I admire how brave you are. Like, I wish I could have been that brave.
How sweet is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's still moments where she will kind of say things like, oh, so you're not doing like X, Y, or Z anymore. And I'm like, no, I'm still doing that. But she'll say it in a way where she's like, oh, I'm happy you're not like doing whatever. Like it's very interesting.
Oh, so let's talk about like, when did you decide that law wasn't it, that you were going to transition into acting and comedy and all these other stuff?
It was like a combination of things that had been like boiling under my skin for X amount of years, and then also just like external situations. So when I first started working as an attorney, I worked at a small firm where it was 2 partners and me. And I know this is not the environment for every single law firm. I know that all lawyers are not kind of assholes, like hashtag not all lawyers, I know. But there was definitely an environment of like, oh, we're going to treat the associate like shit because that's the way it was for us.
Right.
And she'll keep being treated like shit until she treats someone else like shit, which I hated. Right. I didn't like that. I was like, dude, you can just be nice. You can just be a nice person. Be easy to work with.
Wait, you didn't like being treated like shit? That's so weird. So strange.
Yeah. So like there was that. And then, so at that time, and I had been listening to a lot of podcasts because I drove a lot because they would send me to court all the time because I never wanted to go to court. And always thinking to myself deep down, I think I could probably create stuff. Podcasts maybe being the first thing I wanted to create. But also I was like, I think I could do like character work or improv or something like that. Like, I think I'm creative enough and deep down strange enough that like I can create some pretty interesting stuff. But I think at that time I was like, oh, well, I could just always be a consumer. I think I'll be happy just always consuming. And then finally I was like, but I can't deny how much I want to be on that other side.
Had you done anything like before this? Had you done comedy or acting or improv or any of that stuff?
No. Well, I did like in high school, I did debate, and then they had these things called like individual events where you could do like more artsy fartsy type stuff. And I would it was a little more performative. So I did those. And then in middle school, I was in performing arts, but I never got cast. I was like the weird looking kid that, could never be a lead. So I was like literally a horse in Cinderella, but I'd always liked singing and performing. And when I was really little, I used to get my dad's camcorder and me and my cousin would be hanging out, and my sister. I remember filming little sketches we would do because I wanted to be on SNL.
Right.
So I had like these desires percolating, but I had never done any, improv or anything like that.
And so when you're thinking about this, like especially like with podcasting or something like that, that's not typically a career, right? And so when you're thinking of getting out of something, obviously, like there's a lot of times like financial concerns and like, how am I going to live and all this stuff. And, comedy and acting and stuff is notoriously a very difficult profession to get into. And then especially like when you're thinking about podcasts, I mean, were you thinking like, I want to do this as a hobby, or you're like, no, I want to quit law to pursue these types of creative endeavors?
I wanted to quit law to do something in comedy. And I wasn't sure what.
Well, I mean, did you start like planning for that kind of financially or thinking about like how that would work? Or was it just like, I have to get out of this and I'm going to figure it out?
So I enrolled in an improv class while I was still practicing law. I started at UCB, and then I took a little break, and then I did stand up for a little while. And I was still like doing both. Like I was a lawyer and doing comedy at night. And then I enrolled in an improv class at the Nerdist, which is now the Nerdist School, which is now dissolved, and it's called the Ruby now. But at the time it was Nerdist. And there was a girl in my class who was a working voice actor. And I kind of like got to talking to her, and I was like, maybe that's something I could do, because I can do voices. And also I understand that voice acting is about acting and not necessarily doing a crazy voice. So then I was like, well, I got to do it. So there's this website called ACX, which is like Audiobook Creation Exchange, I believe. And you can go on there, you can audition for audiobooks, and then you produce them. So I auditioned for one and got it. And I was like, well, I know I can do it. So I quit my job. And it was very hard because I made $700 in the first 4 months. Wow. And I was like, oh man, I might die.
Well, and okay, so going back, I mean, when you said that you quit, I mean, I know now you're saying your mom was saying she's proud of you, but at that time, like having to tell your family and friends, what was that like for you?
It was hard. And I actually kind of lied to them. This is how sad it was. I knew that to them, writing seemed more academic and more like something to be more proud of than acting, which now I do a little bit of writing, but I mostly act. So I lied and said that I got a writing gig. And I was allowed to be completely vague about it because my parents know nothing about the entertainment industry and still don't now that I actually do stuff in it. So I lied and told them that. And I was like, I'm leaving to be a lawyer. And I was like, and if it doesn't work out, then I'll go back. When in my mind, I was like, there is no way in hell I am ever going back. The first chance I could, I didn't pay my dues. I like canceled my bar dues. And so I'm not
you
licensed.
Burned the bridges and you burned the ships before you stormed the island. There's no going back.
Yeah, there's no going back.
That's incredible that you had that like clarity though, because I think so many of us, like even for me, when I quit, I mean, it took me a long time to admit it, but even for years after, I kept paying my bar dues. And even though I knew I wasn't going to go back, and it was literally like last year that I was like, oh my God, stop paying this money. Like, this is insane. So, I mean, I commend you. Why do you think that you got to that point when like so many people can't, where it's like, you know what, I don't like this. And so no matter what, I'll figure it out, but I'm not going to go back.
I started doing like some freelance voiceover stuff at like very low rates. And I remember thinking the creative world is a big one. If this doesn't work, I'll try something else. And I survived this change, so I'll survive future changes.
I love that. I love that. And I do think, you know, I feel like people that listen to this podcast, I repeat myself all the time because it comes up in everybody's kind of story, is that the reality of it is like there is no set path and you have to figure it out anyways as you go along. But if you just have the confidence in yourself that you will figure it out, like that is the only thing that will allow you to jump, is that, you know, if this doesn't work, you'll figure it out. But so many of us are like afraid of like, well, I don't know what's next. Like what if I can't figure it out? And so like we end up staying stuck.
Yeah. And also I would say too, and this is something I've had to explain to my mother, a fear that comes up is like, what if I've wasted all these years? But nothing's a waste. I'm Slytherin, so it kind of makes me sound like very calculating, but like nothing in your life is a waste.
Right.
Like you take what is valuable from every interaction and every experience, and then that changes who you are. So I don't think I could work. I mean, it is a blessing and a curse. I like overwork a lot, but I don't think I could work as hard as I have. And I don't think I would have had the work ethic to kind of make stuff happen in a shorter period of time had I not gone to law school, had I not been a lawyer, had I not learned that like sometimes you got to do shit that you don't want to do to get what you want. As far as like, you know, I had to do this like LLC shit for my taxes and stuff.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I'll just do it. I'll take a day to like just do it and get it done. So that's helpful. And then there's another thing too, is like, there is no fair. There is no like justice in the world. There's just what is.
Right.
So what is that you are where you are. Like you're the only person that gets to experience your life. So do what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I agree 100% that everything leads you to the next thing. And it's whatever it is, it's part of your path. Plus, it's such a waste of time, like to sit and think about like, oh, you know, I wasted this much time. Okay, like you did, and now you're here.
Yeah.
And that's the thinking to me is, okay, you've wasted 10 years being a lawyer or going to law school or medical school, whatever. Like, don't waste the next 30, you know? Like, if you hate it, then do something else. Like, why sit and dwell on this fact that like, oh, it will all be for waste? I feel like, I don't know, we focus too much on the past, and like, if you start thinking about literally how much time you have to work and you think about doing something you hate, I think that's enough to make people like snap into realizing that they shouldn't be doing it anymore.
Exactly. Like whenever people are like, oh, but like, like they'll fixate on, oh, but like all this stuff happened in the past. And I'm just like, okay, but that conversation's done.
Right.
It was done when you said X amount of years have gone by that I'm like wasting my time. Okay, now that's done. We know that's the fact. And now we just have to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you were saying that you met this person at this improv class and that got you onto voice acting. Again, that's like another theme that we just see, is that like you have to just take action. And once you keep doing things, like that will lead you to maybe an opportunity or an idea that you never knew about. Like it's not going to just magically like come to your front door, you know? So you were out and about and you figured out this voice acting career. But one thing I hear a lot from people is, oh, but there is too many of this, or there's too many, you know, God, there's too many actors, or I could never do that. Like there's so many writers, you know, I'll never make a living. And how did you get over that? I think being in LA, you know, everywhere you go, people are comedians and writers and actors and whatnot. And so what was it that made you have the confidence to be like, I can make a living doing this?
This is going to sound a little like narcissistic, but I like me. And I was like, I like hanging out with me. I think other people would. It's a question of like knowing what your strengths are. Like, do you know deep down? Do you think deep down, hey, I got something like kind of cool I want to share with people? Be it writing, be it like I just started writing this narrative podcast and I've never done that before. And so it's been kind of this thing of like doubt, right? Because it's like there's so many, God, in LA, everybody has a podcast.
Right.
Everybody has like 7 podcasts. But deep down, I was like, no, but this is a cool story. Like this is something really interesting and really cool. So I think if deep down in a vacuum, you think this is kind of cool and not just, I want to be famous. I want to be part of that world. I want to have funny friends, not that, but I think I have something kind of cool that I want to share, be it a performance as like an actor, be it like you're writing something. If you think that, then you should try. The only difference between people that have made it versus people that haven't are the fact that people that have made it, and it being, again, it's such an amorphous thing. But people that are working working actors, working writers, whatever. The only difference is they never stop trying.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think it has to kind of be like, you have to be okay with failure. I think that's for sure. Like, God, I get told no daily. And even when I'm told yes, sometimes directors treat me like shit. Sometimes you have to be able to still believe in yourself and to still want it enough to not care that there's a million actors and that there's there's a million actors and there's a million writers and whatever. So the difference is going to be what you have to bring and are you going to give up?
Right.
And also just like get out there. Seriously, like take classes, like do stuff, go to things. Like I was like never saying no to anything. And I still like friends and my fiance and family are kind of like, okay, you're overworked. Maybe stop doing so much. And I'm just like, no, but I can't not say yes because that was the thing that helped me at the beginning.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you're doing that I love is, I think in this day and age now, you don't have to go the traditional route. So like maybe being an actor to try to be in like blockbuster movies is very difficult, but there's a million different ways that you can now control your own art and do your own things. And I think you're a perfect example of that because you do tons of podcasts and you're on different types of shows. And so I'd like to talk about that. Tell us a little bit about like the podcasts that you do and how you got into that.
Sure. The very first podcast that I did, I was in an improv class. It was the like, everyone go out for drinks after the wrap of our class. And I was talking to this one girl in my class named Ryan, and she was like, oh, I love Buffy. And I was like, I love Buffy too. I've always wanted to have a Buffy podcast. And I think that's the other thing too, is do the thing.
Right.
And I was like, we should start one. And she's like, oh yeah. And I was like, no, for real, let's do it. So I like set it up. We started recording. And so that was the first podcast, Hellmouthy, which talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and later Angel. And through that, I met my Teen Creeps co-host, Lindsay. She came on as a guest. And I had met Lindsay in an acting class. And she had mentioned that she liked Christopher Pike. And I was like, oh my God, me too. I loved Starlight Crystal. And she's like, me too. And we jokingly, we should start a podcast. She emails me later and is like, hey, but do you want to start that podcast? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. We started doing it. We shopped it around, got picked up by Farrell because Lindsay knew the head of the network at the time from a UCB, either UCB or something else. Mm-hmm. But, it's just like in the community, you know people. And that helped a lot because My Favorite Murder used to be on there and we had like a pre-roll. Uh-huh. Which is an ad that's at the beginning for people who aren't familiar.
And when you're saying picked you up, like for basically a podcasting network. And so you guys produced your show on their network.
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's like a way to make money to do your podcast.
Yeah, because then they can get ads for you. Right. But then, I don't know if people are familiar with all the drama that happens in podcasting worlds, but Farrell dissolved and then a different network picked us up. Forever Dog. So you can get paid a variety of ways through podcasting. You can get ads, or you can have a Patreon, which we have both. So we started as our like behind the paywall content, doing this thing where we would read works from the public domain and kind of interrupt and make fun of them. Kind of like the joke is like, we're these idiots that haven't read these like some of them are terrible because there's a reason why some people don't renew their copyright. So we'll like read them out loud and we'll usually get like a fun big guest on and kind of do like a round robin treatment of it. Then our producer was like, yeah, but this should be its own show. So now we have 2 shows on that network.
That's so funny. And when you were saying behind the wall, you mean for Patreon is like when your audience can basically give you like a monthly, it could be $1 a month or $5 a month or whatever to help contribute to you producing whatever it is. And a lot of artists are on Patreon, a lot of creatives, and then they can get special behind the scenes things or behind the wall that's just for that Patreon community. And it also allows like the artist to make some reoccurring monthly income.
Yeah.
So now you guys have Teen Creeps and Public Domain Theater, and you have 2 other podcasts as well, right?
So my co-host from Hellmouthy, Ryan, we had like one episode where we brought on one of our mutual friends, Colin J. Morris, and then one of Ryan's friends who I hadn't really met, named Patrick Ellers, for like a very special episode. And the chemistry was so good. We 4 became like very close friends over time. Like we always joke, like if there was like a way for 4 friends to get like a friend marriage, we would. So then we started a podcast called Same Day Shipping. And that's where we talk about, for those who are not familiar with like the nerd lexicon, shipping is when you just like take different characters and you're like, I want them to be in a relationship together. And you kind of like enthuse about those characters. So we just like basically ship every character from every fandom with every character. And then I had met some other people doing other nerd stuff on the internet because I also do tabletop RPGs and D&D and play video games on Twitch through different nerd channels, HyperRPG and Saving Throw Show.
So can you quickly explain what that means? So Twitch is, I honestly think a lot of people may not even know what Twitch is, let alone like what these types of shows are.
Yeah. So Twitch is basically an interactive platform. It started with mostly gaming. So you would like play video games and then there would be like a little overlay of your face on there while you're playing. And then people can join the chat and kind of talk to you. So it's kind of like just hanging out with someone while they're playing video games. And it's monetized by people being able to donate to you. Usually people will kind of like gamify it, you know, like you donate this much, you get to do this, whatever. And then, so then there's like channels that run this. And the biggest channels are like Geek and Sundry, HyperRPG, and then for tabletop stuff, which is like D&D and like other types of role-playing games, Saving Throw Show. And so the way that those often work, like at HyperRPG, they will hire like comedians and actors and like people in the gaming world to play tabletop games. And then people can donate to affect the game. So they can be like, oh, $25 and like this creature appears. And then you have to kind of deal with it. So that world, which like I didn't even know, like 5 years ago, I knew nothing about this world. And now I'm like doing a bunch of stuff in it.
But I think that's part of the cool thing. I mean, that was one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast is that, again, I think when you have your head down and you're, you know, working as an accountant or an engineer or whatever, you have no real idea of like what other people are doing. And I think a lot of times we feel stuck because we can't think of another like job that we want to do. But like I was saying before, I think that with the internet, there's just so many more possibilities. And I'm sure for a lot of people listening, they have no idea what any of this even means, you know, so they may have to like go look it up and see what you're doing. But the fact that you can make a living doing comedy and acting in non-traditional roles, like not trying to just get into movies or whatnot and do it through voice acting and do it through Twitch. And even with the podcast, you know, like I always tell people, because I know a lot of people are just getting into podcasts and there's a lot of podcasts that where it's, you know, educational or interviews or whatnot. But I think like once people start discovering that like there's literally podcasts about everything and nothing is too niche. And like those niche audiences tend to be like the most loyal and the ones that will actually like pay you or support you because like they love what you're doing. And so many people have a chance to, even if it's like a side hustle, even if it's just a hobby that you want to kind of put out there and connect with other people, there's so many more opportunities now than there was. And, you know, I'm so happy that you came on the show because I think like you're just showing such a wide range of possibilities of what people can do when you think of traditional actor and stuff. Like you would never think of this stuff.
Because like, you know, everyone's like, oh, there's so many actors. There's too many actors because it's so easy to make stuff now. Well, it's so easy to make stuff now. So there's a lot more content out there. So that means there's more jobs. And like the other thing too is that like I, you know, started doing a lot of this like tabletop stuff, which then gave me enough stuff for like a hosting reel, which then meant I got, hosting gigs like on stuff like video game versions of like The Soup, which then gave me opportunities I got a commercial agent through it. And then I, got commercials. So it's kind of like, it's like if you want something completely new, or if you want to get, the more traditional stuff, there are ways to do it now that didn't exist before.
Absolutely.
Because of the internet.
Absolutely. And so do you have any advice if somebody does want to get into more of like the gaming world, or let's say they don't live in LA and they want to get involved with Twitch, or let's say even like these podcast networks, let's say they have like a creative idea for a podcast. Do you have any advice for how somebody could get started, or like what they should look into? Yeah.
So for Twitch, you can be from anywhere because it's just from your own home setup. Like some of the biggest Twitch streamers just stream, from their homes, and it's just a matter of like getting started. Like I talked to people that are familiar with the Twitch world. I'm friends with Vanna on Twitch, and I started talking to her about it. And I was just like, yeah, I was thinking about like getting into streaming games on Twitch. And she literally was just like, well, then do it. Just do it. So for stuff like that you can do from your home, just do it. Here's what I would say for podcasting. If it's just, and this is going to sound bitchy, but I don't care. If it's just like you and your friends hanging out, talking about nothing, nobody's going to listen to that. Right. And I know that it's really fun to listen to famous people talk about nothing, but they're famous people.
Right.
And that's the difference. There's no way anyone's going to find your podcast if like no one would listen to a podcast of like me talking with a friend about nothing. There has to be something. There has to be like a conceit to the show. And the more unique your idea, the better. I mean, there's always room for a rewatch show. People like those. But also like make the kind of show that you would want to listen to. If you're having fun, I guess that's kind of the double-edged sword though. If you're having fun, then it's likely that other people will be having fun. But remember when you're listening back to your content that you and your friends. So that makes you think it's funnier than it is. So there has to be something else there. But it can be anything though. It could literally be like rocks. I like rocks.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about geodes and rocks to people. That is so much more interesting. And if you are passionate and if you care about learning, I'm not even saying that you're someone that is an expert on something. I really hate the whole, like, you can only talk about something if you're an expert on it. You can't be a casual gamer. You can't be a casual fan. I think that's bullshit. I think that kind of gatekeeping keeps people from trying things that are new. But if you are someone that delights in learning and you just pick a thing, I think that has the makings of something great, more so than just being like, yeah, just like me and my buddies, and we just like talk about what we did this week. And it's like, well, no one gives a shit about what you did this week. I'm sorry. So if you're talking about what you did this week and you're talking about rocks, I mean, I don't know why I'm so fixated on this rock thing, but fine, duck, like anything.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think that the point is that like literally, if you start even searching through Apple Podcasts, there's literally a podcast, like you could pick anything and make a podcast about it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great advice. And I do think, I mean, even if you do, let's say if you want to talk with your friends and you don't want it to be a big podcast, like you just want to do it as a hobby, then that's fine.
Oh, sure.
But
that's great.
Yeah, but if you're going to try to make money off of it or whatever, like you should try to find something. But what I do think that people need to understand is that if there is a topic, a lot of times people think like, oh, this is too niche. So like it would never, because they think like they have to go mainstream. And that's not true. Like I think there's a podcast that is like about, it's like called like Ben Franklin's World. And it's about like early American history. It's like super popular. And I think like she does really well with it, and it's like, you really have to think outside the box, and it allows you to really focus on like, what is your true passion? Like, what do you love talking about? What lights you up when you're when you're talking about it, and like pick something like that and you can create something out of it.
Yeah. If someone can hear the joy that you have in talking about something or learning about something, then that's good. That's a good topic.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, and also, yeah, never think, oh, this is too niche or too weird. Teen Creeps is about teen pulp fiction from the 80s and 90s. Like, most people are like, when is that? And I'm like, okay, it's like, if you didn't read it, it's fine. Like, it's fine. But the people that find you that are like, this is my thing too, are so happy to have found a community. So like, honestly, I like candles. If someone's like, I want to talk all about candles. I want to talk about how candles are made. I want to talk about the best types of things to make candles with.
Right.
I would be like, sure, I would give that a try. That sounds like a cool, interesting thing that's like a little ASMR-y. But yeah, like whatever you are passionate about or want to be passionate about, I think that's what you should make your podcast about.
Yes, I agree. Do you have any advice for anybody that feels stuck in a career that they hate? Like any books or anything that you read or anything that you just, I know you've given a ton of advice, but anything to like make that first step to like get out?
I would say just take a quick look at your life and be like, am I going to be pissed I didn't even bother trying in, 10 years, in 5 years, in 40 years, in whatever amount of years? Am I going to be pissed at myself for not even trying, for not even knowing that I could succeed or fail at this? And then tend your garden, figure out how can I like logistically do this and just do it. And you can tell other people that you can always go back to it. But once you leave, I don't think you will.
Right.
And you'll figure it out. Like, because you have to be able to do stuff like that. If you want this life, if you want the life that's not something steady, okay, I'm going to get paid every, every month, whatever. If you want a life that's literally like fueled by fear, but at the same time underlying it is the sense that, yeah, but I'm going to be okay.
Right.
Otherwise, I would never keep trying.
Right.
So I guess that's my advice.
That's actually perfect. It's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Kelly. This has been super interesting. And I think that you've really opened up people probably to like a new world that they didn't know existed. And I think it's awesome. And I will link to all of your shows and everywhere people can find you. But why don't you just quickly let people know where you're on social media in case they don't check the show notes?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and sometimes Twitch at Kelly Nugent, KELLYNUGEE.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me. If you liked the podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes. It'll help other people find the show. If you want to connect or reach out, follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter and on Twitter at Quitter Podcast. I would love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you on the next episode.